Mark, let me welcome you back to the program now. Well, children dying hand over fist in Gaza. Nobody in the United States seemed to care, but they're going to make their children healthy over there.
Well, this is going to be the test, guys, of RFK Jr. since his February 13 confirmation to be HHS secretary. The first slide is the cover page of a 20-page report involving 11 federal agencies, Make Our Children Healthy Again. Emphasis on the word healthy. It even involves the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the EPA, as well as the NIH and CDC and FDA and things like that. The MAHA Commission unveiled this sweeping strategy to make our children healthy again, and it was unveiled around September 9th. The commission has released the Make Our Children Healthy Again strategy. It's a sweeping plan with more than 120 initiatives to reverse the failed policies, they're saying, that fueled America's childhood chronic disease epidemic. And there is a chronic disease problem with American children, to be sure. The strategy outlines targeted executive actions, and we hear this often, to advance gold standard science. That is repeatedly said, gold standard science. Let's put this slide up. It kind of summarizes some important things. The executive order that is relevant to this was signed, curiously enough, the very day that RFK was confirmed back on February 13. So they must have been pretty confident that RFK would be confirmed because all of this would had to have been laid out. President Trump at that time signed Executive Order 14212, establishing the president's Make America Healthy Again Commission. And that that order directed that commission to submit to the president what we're talking about now, the Make Our Children Healthy Again assessment, according to the strategy report, the 20-page strategy report. Now, this is also important to consider. Vaccine injuries are included. The Health and Human Services, in collaboration with the National Institutes of Health, they're saying, will investigate vaccine injuries with improved data collection and analysis. This is a welcome thing, generally speaking, including a new vaccine injury research program, emphasis, at the NIH's clinical center that may expand to centers around the country. So there could be these vaccine injury research centers being built around the country. Of course, these things remain to be seen. This next slide shows the larger 70-page or so report from which the 20-page strategy report was drawn. This came from the White House itself, again, on September 9th. That's what it looks like. That's the larger 70-some pages. And it talks about a strategic realignment to turn the tide and better protect our children. We will begin reversing, they're saying, the childhood chronic disease crisis by confronting its root causes, not just its symptoms. Again, emphasis there because that's important and it's good to hear that. After a century of costly and ineffective approaches, the federal government will lead, they're saying, a coordinated transformation, big word there, of our food, health, and scientific systems. And I list the sources there that for those that want to freeze the frame. But moving on from there, we have a couple quotes from RFK Jr. himself as HHS secretary. This one, the Trump administration is mobilizing every part of government, he's saying, to confront the childhood chronic disease, the chronic disease epidemic, pardon me. And then there's another quote from RFK. This strategy, he says, represents the most sweeping reform in modern history. Again, very big words, realigning our food and health systems, driving education and unleashing science to protect America's children and families. And this is another important part I'm emphasizing here. He's claiming we're ending the corporate capture of public health. That, of course, is a very big statement. Ending the corporate capture would involve big pharma. That would involve inevitably, if he's serious, the mRNA, the whole crisis brought on by the mRNA injections, which aren't even traditional vaccines, which have caused so much harm. Anyway, looking back very briefly, I recently talked about how RFK was roasted by, among others, Senator Bernie Sanders, and this slide just briefly recalls that. And that was at the time concerning the CDC director, Susan Menares, having been fired by RFK. Several senior CDC officials quit in protest, and RFK fired all 17 CDC vaccine advisory committee members. He fired all of them. That's what was happening at the time recently when RFK was put on the hot seat by Bernie Sanders, among others. But then there's been another hearing since then. And this article from the Children's Health Defense, the Defender, talked about at the time an upcoming Senate hearing asking, is it a ploy by Big Pharma and the big media to position things or create a climate to get RFK Jr. fired? Well, since that article ran, that hearing took place this past Wednesday on the 17th. And this slide gives a summation of that. The chairman of the committee, Bill Cassidy, a Republican from Louisiana, he announced the hearing, and it initially did not have RFK on the hot seat. He hasn't been interviewed yet. That's coming up. The committee is continuing its work, but it's on, basically, it's about restoring radical transparency at the CDC and protecting children's health. But apparently, Susan Menares, the former CDC official that was fired, and a colleague of hers testified this past Wednesday, trying to shift all the blame to RFK, saying he's, taking the CDC apart in an improper way and trying to shift the focus off of them and onto RFK. So RFK is evidently going to be interviewed by that committee again. So he'll be on the hot seat again soon. But I'm looking at the overall report here, the 20-page report. And to summarize very quickly, they're also looking at the root causes of autism, although they don't mention vaccines explicitly involving the root causes of autism. They're looking at more limiting of fluoride in public water supplies. Vaccine injury, as I mentioned, is on the table. Air quality, another important one, microplastics and synthetics. Food, in other words, nutrition as medicine, not just eating better, but food being almost used in a medicinal sense. Gut microbiome research, where the microbiome, the floral bacteria in your digestive system, which is so crucial to your health, they're looking at that more closely. So there's a lot of very positive things in here in terms of the topics, in terms of the goals. The question is this is a very tall order. This is a very ambitious project. Will RFK and his HHS, will they have blanks in the chamber, or are they going to fire real bullets? And I'm just using a metaphor, and really go after big pharma control, really go after corporate control and make this happen, because there are a lot of good goals, but in the time frame they have and considering the scope of this thing, are they really going to be able to pull this off? Of course, many of us would support the idea of doing it, but can they and will they actually pull it off? Because it's a very tall order. So there's some good news here, but it's a big mountain to climb. So I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you, Mark. I'm going to say it's a shame that you even needed to qualify that statement by pointing out that it was a metaphor, but that's maybe a realization of the free speech situation that we're in these days. Look,